Welcome back to the Upstate Coffee Collective podcast. Happy Monday. Hope you're having a great week. We've got a great show for you today. We are talking with our good friend Katt Schott-Mancini. I first met Katt when I went to Crew Coffee for the first time as somebody who barely knew anything about coffee. She was behind the bar. She was very friendly, very knowledgeable. I got formally introduced to Katt through Kevin because he is the social butterfly. We became friends through our shared love of good emo pop punk music from the early 2000s, and our shared desire to see the coffee community grow in our region. Katt has since moved back to Connecticut with her significant other. Got a couple of coffee jobs that didn't work out for her, weren't exactly what she was looking for, and she has now exited the coffee community professionally, and she's found herself a desk job that she is liking very much. It's early, but what we talk about today is exiting the coffee industry and why that is a topic of conversation, especially lately, at the tail end of the pandemic. After so much toil and so much heartache and drama, people, I think, are fed up with the kind of working conditions in the service industry in general. The conversation veers into different avenues of political arguments surrounding labor and wages, unionization, and socialism. And it's just an interesting kind of blending of kind of the reality of labor and the future of it and what people dream up for our communities and our society. All right, people, have a great week. I hope you enjoy this podcast episode. Don't forget to leave a positive rating if you can. A review is even better. Follow us on Instagram. We're also on Twitter now, and we have a Discord channel. All of that stuff will be either in the link in our show notes here, or you can go to the link in our bio on our Instagram, which is kind of our primary page. Final note, listeners of this podcast can save 10% on a bag of All Day ADK, our flagship coffee blend that we collaborated on with Knockabout Roasters, by using the code podcast at checkout. It is delicious, it is approachable, and right now we're running our summer blend, which is a little more fruit forward, a little brighter, great for iced coffee. That's it. I hope you have a great week. Remember to reach out to your friends in the LGBTQ community, the BIPOC community, the AAPI community. Stay in contact with all of your homies. Make sure everybody is feeling safe and heard and understood. And be good to people. Love y'all. Have a great week. I know, and I followed suit, but I just want to be sure.
I was so sure it was a sure shot. I hate myself.
I'm gonna cut
makes
it.
You feel better.
I'm gonna cut all of that. And welcome back to the Upstate Coffee Collective podcast. My name is Matt Pfeiffer. My co-host Kevin Miner.
That's right.
Talking shit
all the time.
Our guest today is our good friend, returning guest, Katt Schott-Mancini.
Katt Schott-Mancini.
Hi, buddy.
I'm
Greetings.
Just to get right into it, because I think this will be a nice little updated version of this question. For the listeners, Katt, who are you? How are you doing? And what do you do?
So my name is Katt Schott-Mancini. I was a coffee educator for about 10 years. I worked and managed a couple shops, so doing roasting, quality control. I used to volunteer with Expo, with the SCA. I am still an SCA certified instructor, although I have recently exited the coffee industry on a professional level kind of going down to just a hobby, my passion project that does not give me money to exist. I am great. Currently, I am working in water equipment, basically process equipment. Think of like water filtration.
Oh, cool.
It's kind of like, coffee's on one side with like water and all that stuff. And then it's kind of like I'm on like the industrial side, but still within water, which is kind of cool. There is a lot of kind of like crossover.
Yeah.
Which is very helpful. But yeah, I'm great.
Yeah, I was going to say
here.
Well, we're happy to have you. I was going to say a very silly way for me to view that would be to say, oh, you're working in water. That's coffee adjacent.
So I just started, and so far it's interesting. It's mostly dealing with like the equipment itself. So it's learning about like the different products that the company I work for sells and different stuff they're doing, different projects they're working on. One of their biggest customers is Pfizer. So working directly on the vaccine. They also help source products to assist with COVID test kits. Mm-hmm. So it's been interesting so far. It's a lot of just like, honestly, data processing at this point for my responsibility.
Oh, I fucking love data.
I just pointed at Matt. Like,
love data. That's what
all
I do,
you, buddy.
Okay, I really want to dig into the fact that you left the coffee industry after so long, having all of these seemingly, to me, right, as a noob in the industry, like unattainable accolades, like. Yeah. Volunteering at SCA, coffee educator, you were a roaster, you have certifications, or at least you have the ability to do maintenance on like La Marzocco espresso machines, right?
Certified.
You're a certified La Marzocco
technician.
Mm-hmm. So all these things, to me seems like, the makings of a very successful career in coffee, but you exited the coffee industry. And I guess a lot of people reached out to you and were like, hey, congratulations. Also, how did you do it? Because I'm also trying to do that, which is a huge conversation that needs to be had in our sector. So I guess I'll start with give us a little bit of backstory about sort of maybe where you were over the last year or two, and then talk to us about what led you to exiting the coffee industry?
Yeah, so as you know, I have relocated to Connecticut upon last summer, and I was at Crew for a year. So I did some of their tech service calls, and I was one of the full-time baristas there. I moved to Connecticut. I initially got a job working as a barista, but also roasting. So I started like roasting for this company a little bit, and I realized that like, man, I don't think I like roasting anymore. Part of it was because I didn't have the control. Like I was creating the profiles, but also I had to like, basically when I was roasting previously for a company in Newport, Rhode Island, I had full control. I did my own quality control. I did my own green buying. I did what I want. It was my production facility essentially. So I was using someone else's green, someone else's parameters, and I had to follow a lot of basically like regulations the company set up for me to adhere to. And I bypassed about 90% of those regulations, created a better product. It sold better. Customers liked it more. The staff liked it more. The owner was very resistant to and honestly, in his words, a tiny woman changing his production.
Wow.
Oh, hell no.
I was put off by that. So I started roasting for them. And then, whereas the owners themselves were really great people, upon hearing that, I was kind of like, that's not how you treat somebody, or talk about somebody, whether you think they're going to hear it or not. So that was my first kind of notch. Like I'm working in customer facing role, like in person during a pandemic where like you're literally exposing yourself every day, Like, I found out I was on odds exposed to COVID-19 in my workplaces at least once a day by somebody.
Wow.
And that's kind of terrifying. And that was like the first thing that really made me want to leave the industry, because I was like, I want to do something where I don't feel like I'm putting myself at risk. I'm not physically on my feet for 10 hours a day. Because that was another thing in shops I've worked at, is in the service industry in general. It's like, you see those memes, right, where you're like crouched down behind a counter eating for 2 seconds between customers, and because you can't take a break. That's the reality of working in most coffee shops from my personal experience. I can't speak to other places, but most places I have worked is scheduled breaks are very difficult, especially during pandemic times, because your staffing is so disorganized. And working during this pandemic, it was just like one thing after another, like long shifts, no breaks. Business is slowed. You're not having nearly the same customer volume you once had. So tips are going to be lower, and wages are not going to be adjusted to make up for your tips, especially if you're reliant on tips as your main source of your income. And in coffee, I mean, you guys know that you get an hourly and your tips usually are almost double what your hourly is when you break it down mathematically. So I left that shop I first started at. I also found out the owners were paying themselves with our credit card tips. That was their wages. And that's wage theft.
Yeah,
that's exactly what that is.
That's a certain shade of embezzlement right there.
Exactly. So myself and another new hire who had moved to the area from out of state, we both have like similar coffee backgrounds. We both resigned the same day. We're like, nah, nope. We're not dealing with this. So, right. So I started another shop that's more, it is a good coffee shop, but they're not a coffee shop. I would consider them kind of like casual dining with like an espresso bar, and they do alcohol service. Whereas their coffee, they use great, coffee they use Kuma coffee, which is great. And some other like Edison they have in for retail sales. They had Ceremony. They used Bolt Coffee at one point. They're really great. Their focus shifted from the coffee program more so towards dining and the food aspect. So my job was pretty much mostly, working in a cafe, but there were aspects of it to where I was essentially a server. I had to be a bartender. I had to know a food menu like the back of my hand, lots of food running. It was just way more than being in a coffee shop. And in that position, the tips were great, but if there's so many factors that came down to like how these customers were tipping you, and that really affected my mental health. So I was kind of like, working in a pandemic, number one, is kind of like, this is really hard. I don't feel valued most of the time. Like at Crew, I'm going to shout them out because like they did everything right until like having a staff during a pandemic. They made me feel so safe, and that like I was comfortable going to work every day, bent over backwards to make sure like everything was great. Like they did it right. But everywhere else I've been since, they put the employee safety second. So like the last place I was at, nobody was vaccinated. The whole staff at multiple times was like, I'm not comfortable doing indoor dining until we're vaccinated. The owner was like, we're doing indoor dining. That sucks. You got to deal with it. We had an immunocompromised staff member who was like, I can't get vaccinated. I'm not comfortable with working here. I don't know what to do. And basically the owner was like, you guys, if you don't like it, you don't have to be here. So that whole experience really just made me kind of hate the coffee industry, because I heard so many similar stories from folks who are like, I didn't feel safe. I got taken off the schedule. I stood up for myself. I advocated my needs, and they didn't listen to me. So that's what made me really kind of look at this industry differently, is because of how these shop owners who seem so progressive, so mindful, they're doing all this transparency, like with Black Lives Matter and protest and participating in protest and closing their stores early so employees can protest. But then when it comes down to, to COVID-19 issues, you have 8 people saying, I don't feel safe. You're putting my health at risk. I'm not comfortable being here, and telling you to essentially like, screw you. You got it. This is your job.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
No.
Yeah. It seems like these shop owners, and you can't like paint with a broad brush on every owner, obviously. But it does seem like what we saw with this pandemic is you saw these guys and gals who are, self-proclaimed progressives and advocates for people and want to treat their employees right and want to do the best that they can be, or be the best they can be for their employees. When their back was against the wall, that was where they kind of saw their true colors. And COVID-19 has really been that. Yeah.
Exactly. And, they say we have to make money and we got to do this and that. But in the end, you're not going to make money if you don't have a staff. And that's what was happening, is these shops are losing their staffs.
Yeah. Well, and really, like, a lot of the issues that you were touching on that kind of come down to the owners putting business first. Those have been happening in the service industry, which the cafe end of the coffee industry is very much a part of for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a survival thing. And I can't, I have a hard time saying, like, I understand that, like, you can't have a cafe that's progressive if the cafe doesn't survive, that it doesn't make money, right? So it is this weird back against the wall survival situation. And unfortunately, the people in a service industry, like the servers in a service industry, whether it's, baristas, servers, bartenders, all of these people already make like shit wages.
Yeah.
They're stuck between a rock and a hard place. You either have shit wages and like an increasingly uncomfortable workplace scenario because of something like COVID, or you have no job, is really what the other end of the spectrum is. And that's not me like trying to like that's not me trying to like be on the side of the cafe owners that are treating their employees this way. But I think I'm recognizing that, like, we got stuck in this scenario, in this weird time frame where there was no voluntary support. It was make or break for a lot of companies, and we saw so many companies close their doors because they couldn't make it. So it just sucks to have to be on that end of the problem where, like, you can't even advocate for yourself. Have you seen a lot of other baristas in the industry, or I should just say coffee people in the industry, also have a similar experience?
Yes and no. So a friend of mine, for most of the people in the coffee industry, we were making better money on unemployment when we had all the mandatory shutdowns in early 2020. And that made a lot of folks kind of reevaluate how they're perceiving, like, this position, the money we make doing working as baristas, roasters, production, whatever. And I know a couple people were like, I don't want to go back to work. I'm making money hand over fist. I'm not breaking my back. My mental health is better. And kind of made them realign, I'm going to look for a job where I could be making X amount of money and not be working so hard. And that was a big common thing I noticed with folks, is that they don't want to go back to work. They were given the option, hey, you can either come back to work or not. Some chose to go back. Some did not. And those who did found that they were in a bad headspace the whole time because they didn't want to be there. They didn't feel valued for their labor. None of us do. But, it's a really difficult position to be in. And a lot of the coffee folks I spoke to were like, it's not, we can point a finger wherever we want, right, for how folks are feeling. It's a pandemic. it's a whole nother discussion, but it's like the government should have paid people to stay home. You know, like, why was food service essential? Why were we forced to be put in this position? But I digress. It's neither here than here with this discussion. But basically, coffee folks were screwed in a lot of ways. I mean, you had baristas, especially. I kind of noticed it was almost like regional. I kind of want to like see further on this data because it'd be kind of fascinating. But I noticed a lot of baristas in the Midwest and the South did not get unemployment. They were really struggling. There were stipulations on their benefits. So there was a lot of like funds going around for supporting baristas. I know in like Tennessee, I saw a handful of those, a couple from like, I want to say Arkansas too. There's folks, you know, raising money, but it's, folks just feel burned out and having to go back to work during a pandemic under these very stressful and traumatizing conditions. It's really hard. And then to know that like you were making more money being safe, taking care of yourself at home than you are, you know, having to work now. It's really difficult. And, I know like for myself, that was part of it too. I don't feel like it was worth it for me to be putting myself out there, but I had to work. And I had a couple other friends who also were like, if I don't work now, I'm going to lose my job. I don't have job security. You know, we have to go back out there. And they were, they really struggled with it because they were like, I think this is crap. Like, I shouldn't be working. We shouldn't be working. Like, he was really advocating with like local government here to be like, pay food service workers, pay these businesses to close. Like, we're barely making money. People who are coming in here don't need us. Like, we're not essential. Like, shut it down. Pay us to stay home. Like, he was really all about it. But it's tough, and everybody was feeling it in one way or another. And then you have folks too who are like just grateful that, you know, cafes were still open. They were like essential. It made them feel like they had worth, and, you know, they had a reason to get up every day. So, I mean, I know my personal experience. I know the experience of folks I've spoken to directly, but I'm sure like every coffee person's going to have a different take on, you know, the situation as a whole. And then those who actually look into exiting the industry because of these things. And then there's others who are thinking about leaving for periods of time prior to the pandemic. And then I've also talked to coffee folks who just rage quit, left the industry, and never looked back. And so it's the best move ever. So it's so difficult because it's so situational.
Yeah.
I don't want to derail the conversation too much, but one thing that pops up in my head is that a lot of people who worked laborious jobs or, you know, were working in an industry that didn't pay very well, that did get to stay home when we were shut down, got a taste of UBI or universal basic income, and got a taste of what life could be like for everybody if work was not a survival mechanism or a survival tool, and instead was a tool for expression of creativity, of passion, and of community. If you wanted to be a barista, not because you have to work 35 or 40 hours a week in order to pay your bills, in order to survive, like the bare minimum, food, shelter, water.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you could do it for the love of creating coffee or creating memorable experiences with people that walk into your shop and connecting with people and improving their days. And it's frustrating because I really didn't expect this, but like I saw so many people, including our friend Chris Kerr, who like had to stay home because it was, you know, mandatory shutdown for a while. We all got unemployment benefits, and they were extended thanks to the stimulus from the government. And people all of a sudden had the money that they needed to survive and time and space to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
be good to themselves and think about the things that really matter to them. What do I want to do with my life? How do I want to express myself as a person on this planet? Instead of the constant rat race of, if I don't go to work today, I can't pay my bills, I'll be out on the street.
Yep.
Which happens to people.
Yeah.
So the anger is there. The frustration is there, and I feel it, and I don't know what the answers are, because certainly there are so many people, so many groups of people in the world that are anti-UBI or anti really just lifting up the lower middle class. And this is just one of many examples.
Yeah.
Thoughts? I didn't have a follow-up question.
No, I'm processing that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. The pandemic really cracked wide open that that facet of life.
Yeah. Well, and there's kind of a new zeitgeist coming about, and it's been coming about, relatively incrementally for a long period of time. And I think it, people having to stay at home but having a livable wage enhanced the progression of that zeitgeist. And it's that we don't want to have to work to live.
Right.
Yeah. What you're saying, we don't want to have to work to live. We want to be able to live so that we can go and be productive at work.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's about doing work that is meaningful to you, and to the world. And that even gets into really the concept of like socialism, where the workers who produce the labor, who provide the labor, own the means of production, and that the business owner, the person who brought forth the capital, is just a team member in that group. And that you don't necessarily get to make 130 times what your base wages are. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not sitting. The Upstate Coffee Collective podcast is not sitting here necessarily.
Matt is holding a hammer and a sickle right now.
Advocating.
I just want everyone to know he pulled them out from under the table while he said
he's gonna pull out the Conquest of Bread next, and then and then he's gonna have the Communist Manifesto in the other hand, because then we're gonna go totally on that other spectrum.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Marxism.
No, I know where you're going, and it's the only thing that I would care to say from my base level education in this realm, like from what I know, and I could be wrong.
Sure. Right.
But to me, it seems like the word we're going to continue hearing as we assess our culture, right? And this kind of goes into like something that I've been feeling, that it relates to the coffee industry, it relates to the service industry, it relates to, a lot of things. The word we're going to be hearing more and more is systemic. And because the problems we're dealing with are problems that have been built up over time, over the course of generations, into the fabric of society and culture. So they are, in fact, systemic, right? And now we are attempting to, we are attempting to adjust them. We're attempting to move forward with different versions of them. We're attempting to reform them. And these words are scary for a lot of people. And that's really that's as much as I kind of have on that right now. I have a lot of time where I sit down. You know how I am, Matt. I'm very into, I'm reading Deleuze and Guattari in my free time, and I don't share that a lot with people. But when I sit down and I'm thinking about things like this, and my brain is just, I'm kind of turning my own wheels. This is what comes up, is that there's patterns that they pop up in society. And as you see them, you can see the changing of times and the move away from the coffee industry as a means of better health for a lot of people, which is really what we're talking about right now, is a move away from service industry as a means of better health for people. I just had a conversation yesterday with someone who left the service industry not too long ago. And the conversation, and I've had this conversation probably a dozen times, was I just couldn't do that lifestyle anymore. That's the crux of it. It was I couldn't do that lifestyle anymore. So here we are, and we were working the same shift yesterday, right? And here we are, and we're having the same, and we're echoing that sentiment. And that echoed sentiment proves that there is, even possibly just in a local fashion, right, a systemic issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's very well put, because like, I mean, it is a lifestyle to be in the service industry.
Yeah.
And then the minute you realize that you don't have to continue that lifestyle if it's not working for you, like this pandemic, with folks staying home, that's when you kind of realize like that lifestyle was not serving me.
Yeah.
And that was something like I know I experienced. I really realized that I was like, that I can't do this anymore. Like the inconsistencies with my schedule, not knowing what my life was, my life is dictated by my work schedule. And it shouldn't be like that necessarily. But no, like, and your friend saying like, you couldn't do that lifestyle more, like that's honestly, like, that's the best way to put it. Like, not everybody can maintain that lifestyle, and not everybody enjoys that lifestyle.
And one thing that I'll say for you, Katt, and that I applaud, is that you tried. Like, it's not like you just you didn't, as you said earlier, you didn't just rage quit the industry, right? Like it feels to me like from what you've said and, your journey over the past year to eventually working in the water industry was that, you tried to make coffee work because you were a coffee professional.
I mean,
for sure.
You still are a coffee professional. Like, you haven't lost that professionality that you gained through working in the coffee industry. But, like you were an active coffee professional for so long, and it seems like you were trying to make that work and continue that career. And it just, like, time and time again, the industry itself, in one facet or another, in these specific examples that you've laid out, was letting you down.
Oh, for sure. And it got to the point where, over the years, I was kind of like, what's my next step going to be? Like, I don't want to just be a barista. I don't want to just be a roaster. Do I want to go to Origin? Do I want to get into being an importer or exporter? Do I want to work for like OLM International or Inter-American or Atlas or, or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
And I actually, at one point, I was pursuing a position with Inter-American in Providence. But at that time I had imposter syndrome. I was like, I've only been a barista. I can't sit at a desk and like make contracts and work with production managers and figure out like what coffees people want to bring in. Who am I to think that like, I have the knowledge and the experience to qualify for a job like this. And that was like 6 years ago now. And even now I think about it and I'm like, when I was pursuing the job I have now, it was similar to that, like kind of like imposter. Like, I've been in coffee, I've been in the service industry for 10 plus years. Like, who am I to think I can, talk to basically folks trying to buy different pumps and filtration systems for like, example, pharmaceutical production facilities to filter out their wastewater before it goes into the city sewers. But then I found that, I've been a coffee professional for so long, but I've had so many hats within the industry that it translates like pretty perfectly for literally any industrial, kind of like facet of industry. I found like even with like steel and metalworking, there's a lot of parallels with like stuff you do within the coffee industry from my production experience, and like tech support and roasting. It's kind of funny, but like I may not identify like as a coffee professional anymore. I still have my certifications. I'm still invited to different events. I'm still asked about consulting, but I want to keep coffee as like, as I tell people, like my fun passion thing. I don't want it to like be a weight on me anymore.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, that experience I had in the coffee industry helped shape me into the person I am, which is kind of cool. And it was something I thought really great at and I was confident in. So I kept building my knowledge base on that. But in reality, like anybody can build their knowledge base with anything they want. So just because, you're fluent in one thing doesn't mean you're not going to build and gain knowledge for something else. And personally, that was something I struggled with accepting and understanding. And also like going through kind of like an identity crisis professionally. I was diagnosed as autistic in my like very early 30s, which now I was like, that makes sense. Like looking back, I'm like, oh, that makes sense why A, B, and C is so easy for me. So going through that kind of like professional and personal identity crisis, like I am a person with autism and, there's no autistic people. 9 times out of 10, somebody with autism who just hasn't been diagnosed or they're not open about it, which I learned recently. But it kind of helps in kind of like understanding how my brain works. And that's why, like, for example, coffee, I learned everything that I had access to about the coffee industry. And I was able to understand it was because like, that's how my brain works. So with these other industries, that's like understanding water processing equipment is becoming very easy for me. And other similar things to what I'm doing now. So, getting out of coffee, it's like coffee's the fun thing now. And now it's like, I have my job that I enjoy doing. It keeps my brain busy. Like I actually enjoy my work now, but different industries, similar stuff, but it's definitely like understanding that just because I have this background and experience in coffee, it doesn't mean I have to stay there forever. And once I realized that, it was kind of like a game changer.
Yeah,
Totally.
That's huge. Did you have something?
I've got something too, but you go first.
Okay. A couple things that I really love there. One, I love that you've been sharing your later in life diagnosis with autism. 2, I love that you said person with autism because people first language is super important.
Yes.
People don't realize how important that is. And 3, one thing that I wanted to take a quick moment to mention, Katt is probably one of the most not to tout that you're going to do this forever, but Katt is a really great source of information on social media, and always has been. In that the posts that you share are thoughtful and conscious and conscientious, and they consider people, and that's a lot of what we're talking about right now. So thank you.
No, totally. I think even just to summarize what you said is that we appreciate you and we appreciate the context and the way in which you express yourself and share information and your beliefs so thank you for that, Cav. I think that was really great. My question, this has kind of just been like floating in my head throughout like the entirety of this conversation, is maybe we could do a thought experiment here where I ask you to imagine a world or an environment in which you would have stayed in coffee. What does that look like? Is it pay? Is it personal freedoms, creativity? What are the safety? What are the types of things that somebody, let's say I'm like a business owner that employed you, like what are some things that I could have done differently or better that would have encouraged you to continue on your journey in the coffee industry full time?
That's good.
So I was asked this by a friend of ours that was kind of like, they offered me a job. They offered me a job to come back to New York, and they're like, what would it take to get you to come back to New York to do this? And I was like, first of all, I'm not coming back to New York. But they were kind of like, what would it take to get you to come here? And it's like, when I made a decision to leave the industry, I thought about that conversation I had with them. And I was kind of like, you know what? That's the same conversation I had with him. And it was, after being in an industry with such an inconsistent weekly schedule, no matter what I was doing, it really wears on you. And I was, in my head, I was like, I need set schedule. I need, guaranteed whether it be salary or guaranteed hourly pay within, basically I want a contract that's like, if they don't want to do salary, then doing like guaranteed hourly wage, guaranteed hours per week. I would want like a safe environment. Personally, I was pretty much done with customer facing roles, so I wouldn't really want to be physically like facing customers anymore. I'd be fine like helping out behind a bar as needed, but I wanted to do more of like growth development for a company. I'd rather do more like production. Essentially, I would want to create roast profiles. So I wouldn't want to do production roasting, but I'd want to do sample roasting. It's similar to what I was doing in Newport for a minute, which was I'd sample roast. I'd decide how we're going to roast each batch of coffee. My production roaster, my roasting assistant at the time, would go and do it. He'd do a full batch at the parameters I decided. We'd make sure everything worked out. We had, at that time, they had one of the first custom loorings. So it was a lot of trial and error with that, which I love doing, honestly. Playing with data, understanding how like the machine works when you up batches. It's not just like on the newer loorings, you just plug in your information on their computer program. It's you have to do the math yourself and make sure everything checks out. So in my head, I was like, if I could play around with stuff like that all the time, that'd be great. But it's just not realistic. There's no roaster out there that has that kind of volume to where someone can literally just sample roast and play around with parameters 40 hours a week. It's just not realistic. But to keep me in the industry, it's just like, it's really hard to say, and it's in a realistic sense, because it's kind of like these little things I enjoy doing, but they were little things that you can't make a full career out of those things. They don't need to be done that often, if that makes sense. But, like the dream job, it's kind of like a lot of job security things, because in the end, most coffee jobs do not have true job security. Most are in at-will employment states. Side note, I used to work with the industrial workers of the world and unionizing baristas. In about 2010, 2012, I was trying to help baristas unionize at one point. And that was a big thing, is like consistent schedules, consistent pay. And that's something everybody wants in a job. And I feel you're not asking the world of that. But I digress. But yeah, if I just have a job where I'm just messing around with roast profiles, ordering coffee all day, like that's the dream. But also like I'm a person who wants control over every facet of that. So that's even more unrealistic unless I were to start my own production company, which also is not something I've ever wanted to do, because there is a lot of risk in starting up that. And just being a shop owner is something I used to entertain and kind of like consider. But at this point, I learned that I would not be happy doing that. So like in a true realistic sense, there really isn't anything anybody could do to keep me in this industry, especially in the direction it's heading. Also from like an agricultural standpoint and sustainability, it's just, 7 years ago, I went to a La Roya lecture at Expo, and one of the presenters was from Brazil, and he said, I don't think coffee will exist in 50 years. So whenever I think about the industry, I also think about that lecture. I'm kind of like, coffee as we know it may not exist the same in a matter of decades. So it's kind of like, there's just so many factors going on with that.
Yeah. Was he referencing specifically climate change?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I remember like part of the lecture, he was like, yeah, eventually I'm going to have to turn my coffee farm into like hydroponic and greenhouse system, because like where my farm is, it's going to be a desert in like 40 years. And like nobody reacted in the room. And I remember like talking to the presenter after, I was like, wait, what are you talking about? And he was like, yeah, like the elevation, like we truly don't believe like our farm will exist for another generation. And that was just kind of like, disheartening to hear.
Yeah.
But when I, thought about my exit with the industry, and like when people were offering me other jobs in the industry the past few months to the year, it's just like I'm asking, my requirements and my requests for the industry. Just there's no way I would ever receive that, or they're impossible to create.
For people who are listening who maybe don't work in the industry, or maybe I don't know, don't have the context, I'll ask this. I think I tend to lean into my early perceptions of coffee because I am a noob to the industry. I've never worked as a barista. Everything that I do is for the love of it. It's, it is self-actuated. So when I hear, somebody starts off as a barista and has dreams to, they want to be a roaster, they want to roast coffee. And I even think all the way up to Luke Rock, who really has his own, he has full control over his production facility. He is building.
He's a roaster with a roasting program.
Right.
Yes.
That is his shtick. When I look at that level in the coffee industry, I know that baristas start at, minimum wage with tips, with incremental increases over time, merit. I don't know. Right. What does a roaster, just a production roaster, make in terms of wage, if you're comfortable telling us that?
I can definitely speak to that. So a fun fact is, for those who are into beer brewing, right? Breweries, coffee production and breweries are, I don't know about 2020, but in 2019 was the most underpaid introductory position in an industry.
Oh, I believe it.
So I have a few friends in the brewing industry, one of which actually, they moved to Connecticut around the same time I did. And they were telling me that starting wage for a brewing assistant full-time, the average is about $14 an hour.
Wow.
That is the same for roasting production. So my roasting assistant, I made sure that at the time, this is 7 years ago, they were making $14 an hour, because I felt that was fair for the labor involved and everything, and also is to stay within budget for my labor costs. For myself, I was paying myself $15 an hour because that's all I could afford in my labor budget. When you break down the work, I feel that roasters, whether production roasting, it's a lot of physical labor. You're multitasking more than you would. I'm going to speak to my personal experience. I'm not saying this industry-wide, but I was multitasking far more as a production roaster than I was as a barista. And I'd be making more money because of tips as a barista, but I was doing probably 3 to 5 times the physical and mental labor as a roaster than up front. And you don't get tipped as a roaster. So the biggest thing with folks who want to get into roasting, coming from a barista standpoint, is a lot of roasteries, what they'll do, and I know my shop did this. So say you're a barista, you want to start roasting, you just get your hourly, you don't get your tip wage anymore. So you're essentially getting paid minimum wage to now do far more work than you were up front. And they say the benefit is gaining the knowledge. And there are a few roasteries I briefly worked at or consulted with who did this. So they take baristas from the front who want to learn how to roast, bring them into the back. And they said that their owners told them, yeah, we're not tipping you because you're not working up front, but you're getting this knowledge, so that should make up for the difference in your wage.
You're getting this trial by fire knowledge.
That's the equivalent of what you would say to an unpaid intern.
Yeah, well, that's what it is.
Right. Yeah, we're paying you for experience and we're paying you in experience and exposure or whatever.
Pay to play, bro.
Yep.
Oh my god.
Yep. Literally, it's pay to play, right?
That's what I think of.
You get to play on the show, but you got to sell all these. Oh my gosh.
You got to sell 150 tickets, but you get to open up as the first band out of 6 for this touring band. on an off-tour night.
There will be 4 to 5 people in the audience at that time.
Yeah. For anybody listening, who
Yeah,
doesn't know
doors
what we're
open
talking
at
about.
3.
Yeah, we all understand that aspect of the music industry a little too well.
Battle of the Bands. That's all I'm gonna say. Battle of the Bands.
Well, that makes sense because look at I bet a lot of the people who owned venues, you could put them in a position to own a cafe, and they would probably apply the same logistics.
They do. From experience, they do.
There you go.
So, all right. So we've kind of aired our woes about the state of the industry. We've covered a little bit about how
Talked about some doom.
little doom,
Yep.
little gloom,
Yep.
then a little bloom.
Okay.
We talked about the thing. I don't know. We talked about the things that could potentially make the coffee industry worth working in.
Yes.
Right. Ways we could improve it.
Yes.
I mean, first of all, you paid yourself $15 an hour, which is the suggested minimum wage now. Like, we're screaming
Now.
for a $15 minimum wage, and that is
Yeah.
still barely livable.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that we have that, like,
Yeah.
you're not moving from barista to roaster and finally making bank and buying a house and having some kids. Like,
Yeah.
you're still struggling. So. Now let's talk about, you moved out of the coffee industry. Coffee is now a passion of yours. You're still an active professional, but at your own leisure. Tell us a little bit more about the changes you've seen being now out of the coffee industry, working as a professional. You have a desk job.
Oh yeah.
What are some positive changes you're seeing there?
So overall, I see that my mental health is overall better. So for coffee, I used to just bring home bags of beans that oh, this looked good. Or we'd get an order in and I'm like, oh, well, my partner needs coffee at home because we actually work for the same company now. So he started there a few months ago. So I'd always think oh, he needs coffee. I'm going to just bring home whatever. Now I'm finding myself, I guess, really looking at the coffee I'm interested in now. So we've been ordering from Tachi. Luke from Crew gave me some beans that were great. Matt Beer, who some of us know, he's become a really good friend of mine. He sent me some beans for my birthday last month that were awesome, and it's gave me a list of roasters to check out. So now I'm actually really looking into who I'm getting my coffee from. I ordered coffee from you guys, your highlight roast. I was talking to Ron from Stacks about ordering more coffee from him. So it's fun because now I'm looking at ordering coffee as not as oh, I don't have any coffee at home. I don't want to drive to work to get coffee on my day off. Let's just get whatever to have in the house. Now I'm I'm in control of my own coffee every day. I'm going to make it kind of a ritual now, making coffee for us, in the morning before work. So that's been really great because now I'm looking at what everyone's doing and what everybody's importing, what they're roasting, what they're offering, with a new perspective. And that's really great because usually it was oh, I'm going to order this. This is from my friend. I want to support my friend. Or this looks good. Or, oh, I was interested in buying this coffee green at one point. I want to know what they did with it. It's totally different perspective as just a consumer. So that's kind of cool to see the angle all our friends are kind of putting their products out on and taking advantage of that, essentially. But overall, it's been fun. Now we're the joke was always, I want a home espresso setup, right? I want to build my own Linea Mini. I'm going to plumb it indoor plumbing. And now I'm revisiting that whole thing. Cause it's before it was what I really use to set up. If I'm at a shop every day, I'm never going to use it. But now it's no, I want to bring specialty coffee into my home in my own capacity. So it's kind of making coffee fun. It's not my day job anymore. It's not just yeah, I'm passionate about this, but it's really hard to hold it up in a positive light. So now it's making coffee fun again. It's making it enjoyable for me because I don't have that whole stress of it on me anymore. And with my job, coffee, everybody drinks it, but they all think Dunkin' Donuts is the gold standard. So everybody there knows I come from coffee. I've already been asked to like bring in really good stuff and like, you know, do that whole thing.
Are you changing minds on the Dunkin' Donuts thing?
No, but
No, probably not.
we'll see. I mean, I want to like, you know, eventually bring in the fun stuff, but you know, see, all in due time.
Yeah, you got to work your way up to that.
I've been so at my office job, I've been forcing people on my coffee in a
Matt's
way.
walking around and hand pouring it for people.
Hey, cup now. No, what I started doing is the gold standard at my office is Folgers pre-ground in the big red bucket that they have. You know, the freshness seal or whatever they call it.
The big red bucket.
Yeah. So, and they make it on a multi-burner bun brewer, that giant one with like the 4 burners and the. So, what I started doing when I took over the coffee program there, ultimately, right, was I said, okay, I'm not going to, like, I let people know that I have a little coffee thing on the side.
Yeah.
And I needed to make sure there was no conflict of interest. So I definitely did not, like, try and advertise my coffee to people. But I did say, all right, here's what I'm going to do. Every Wednesday, Happy Hump Day, I'm bringing in like 100 or 200 grams of some coffee that I have lying around because I have so much coffee. And then I would brew it in one of the other pots that people don't usually use. And I'll say, hey, it's available. Enjoy it. Here's a short description. I would send it out in a blast email to my people. And people are slowly getting more and more interested. They start running to the pot, like, because there's not enough for everybody.
Yeah.
It's one pot. So like the pot is on and I say it's on and you see people like scramble and like get up and they're like,
whoa,
gotta go get it before it's gone. And it's cool, right?
Yeah.
And people will like hit me up, be like, so like what's the deal with that coffee? I'm like, well, it's, you know, it's this and it's got, you know, it's processed this way and it's and people are like starting to get into it.
Yeah.
But you bet your ass I have a 0% chance of converting them from the baseline Folgers. There's no doubt.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
no chance.
They like what they like.
Yeah.
It's like I tried converting my family. Exactly. Like I tried converting my family for years, and it's like I found at my mother's house a bag of coffee I blended and roasted for her 5 years ago. Still sealed in the jar.
Oh man.
like a bad Christmas gift just left
Literally. So it's like, you know, like people mention, they're like, oh, if you have any suggestions for our coffee, like we want to know what we could do better. And in my head, I'm looking at the president of the company. He's a great guy. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, oh, okay. And in my head, I'm like, you just spent $9,000 on this setup you have. You just told me what you spent not even a year ago on this machine, on the stock for the coffee. They have 12 different options for coffee pods you can use. I'm like, I'm not going to tell you to scrap this whole thing. No.
Yeah, no, that's not. No, he was hoping that you would come back with like, well, you know, there are better pods out there.
You should try these specialty pods.
Oh God. But eventually I want to do kind of like a weekly, you know, like what you're saying, Matt, like, hey, I have this, like there is a traditional coffee brewer and like there is a Keurig somewhere I saw, but just being like, we have this if you want to try something different. And, you know, it's like perfect example. You know, when you go to the airport, right, and it has that hazelnut artificial sweetener smell, like when you're approaching any of the coffee retailers, so you have like the Starbucks, the Dunkin', depending on, you know, where you're traveling from, the espresso, like you can smell it before you're approaching that counter. Mm-hmm. That's how the entire office smells in the morning from this machine.
Yum.
So if I could bring in something fun, but you know, people like what they like.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
All right. One of my final questions for the day is, so you're enjoying brewing coffee at home again. It's more fun to you again. What's your preferred brewer right now? What are you brewing on?
So honestly, we are doing a lot of batch just because it's easier. We have like one of the Ninja brewers, and we just like
nice.
filter, measure our water for it. It's not the worst in the world. It's definitely out of laziness. I still have a Chemex. We have an AeroPress. We got all the fun stuff in the kettles, but honestly, it's been a lot of just batch brew and playing with the parameters on that. It is super customizable. So what I personally do is I brew it on its like cold brew setting. And what it does is it just like does shorter increments of time between pulses, but more volume is dispersed during the pulses of water for its cold brew setting. So I've been playing with that and then just leaving the burner on so it does warm it a little, because it uses still hot water, but it doesn't keep its burner underneath on. So I've just been customizing basically how the machine works and finding ways to kind of like, brew my coffee how I want it to come out, but without having to do the physical labor behind brewing it.
Totally get it.
And like, I've been watching a lot of James Hoffman videos about like customizing espresso machines for home. And I was like, I think I can like hack the Ninja to do what I want. And apparently a lot of people do that on different forums. So it's kind of like, oh my God, like people buy this like $200 coffee brewer and then like 6 hours, of their time total. And it's literally like a monster. It can do whatever you want it to do. So that's like, it's cool. But on the days where I'm like, oh, I want to have like a nice pour over, I still get out my little Chemex. I still do my recipe of like 350 grams of water, 22 grams of coffee, do the Rouse spin with the slurry and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Speaking of the James
Matt only
Hoffman.
asked that because, he wants to humble flex on his new coffee gear that he just bought last night.
I got a little tipsy last night and spent like $140 on a Tim Moore coffee brewing stand and and an origami brewer.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
It was like 12 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like laying in bed. Kenzie's already asleep, and I'm on my phone. Like I just found myself on slow pour supply. It was my first time. Like it is dangerous. I've never been on slow pour supply before until last night.
It's like Matt walked into Digital Target at midnight. Basically.
Digital coffee person Target.
Digital coffee Target.
I was like, fuck it. I don't know. Let's do it. I haven't bought coffee gear in a long time, and I've got it.
You deserve it.
I deserve.
You deserve.
All right, Katt, what's in your mug? Since you're brewing on a batch brewer, that's tight. What are you drinking?
Today.
Today.
So today I actually made cold brew concentrate, like old school style. I had a Guatemala wash process coffee from Edison out of Texas.
Oh, nice.
I had frozen the beans. They're roasted in late March. I froze them because I was kind of like experimenting with making my own concentrate from home. I have Toddy's home cold brew kind of like little setup, which is kind of neat. So I made some concentrate with the Edison, and it was actually really good. I've been kind of experimenting too with making my own blends from different coffees. So one thing when I was roasting, I would experiment with is blending pre-roast and then blending post-roasting. And sometimes with post-roasting, you get different notes because you're taking like two different coffees that were roasted on separate profiles. You're bringing them together. So I was kind of trying the Edison on its own because I have another Guat, it's not a Guat, it's a Honda. It was like a late season Honduras that was naturally processed from Kuma. So that one I felt was like lacking a little, that I felt the Edison can bring it out. So I was actually testing my concentrate of just the Edison so I can see about combining those two and brewing a concentrate of those two coffees together to kind of like balance one another out. So it was pretty good. It was like super florally. Like I had a little bit of like fruit to it. But for me in the freezer, I found with certain coffees after, you freeze it to preserve it, but it loses a little bit of like, those really hearty fruity notes. So this original was have like notes of stone fruit. It came out more kind of like lemony.
Yeah.
But it was pretty good. As a hot coffee, this coffee was great. It was super floral. It was super sweet, well balanced, and it harbored a little bit of that as a concentrate. But yeah, that's like my project now is just like messing around with the coffees I have and trying different ways to make it, more interesting and more fun on my downtime.
That's that nerdy shit that I like.
Yeah.
I love that shit.
Matt, what's in our mugs?
I had to keep a little bit of extra touchy geisha. This is the Carlos Belalcazar.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Yeah. So like you went
Still
in
good.
when he dropped this the Carlos Belalcazar, you bought a whole 12-ounce bag of it.
I bought the first bag.
The first bag.
I got it. They wrote it on the card that got sent to me.
Really?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's tight.
They're like, you're the first person to buy this coffee.
And you
Congrats.
gave me a little bit. And then when we ran out, I was so addicted to it. Like I was so into this coffee.
That was good.
That I was like, all right, I'll go buy. They offered it in like a 3-ounce or a 4-ounce or something. And I went and I put the 4-ounce in my cart and was like, kind of the same vibe I had like last night where I was like, fuck it, So I went and I got the 12. Yeah. So I had to save a bunch. So I've got a bunch of doses vacuum sealed in the freezer.
Nice.
So I pulled a couple out for us. The Belalcazar is still tasting tea-like.
Delicious.
Yeah, it's got that light
That white peach note.
white peach, kind of like jasmine, sort of a body to it.
I drank it before we had officially started the conversation.
Me too.
That's
Yeah,
how
I
great
crushed
it is.
it.
Yeah, we were done with our coffee before we even started talking.
What's
this
in your
morning.
mug? Nothing. It's in
Nothing
my belly.
right now. It was good.
Gone.
Yeah.
Yo.
Yeah, Kat, also what's your jam this week?
This week, let's see. So, I've been listening to, I don't want to say it because it is pretty controversial. Brand New posted like some of their old demos from like your favorite weapon. And so I was really into that, even though like we don't talk about Brand New's. No,
Yeah.
we don't talk about that.
Nope.
Honestly, for transparency, I just wanted to like, listen to it.
Yeah.
Sea Haven had a new record last year. I liked it a lot. I've been told it kind of flopped. I really liked it. Halo of Hurt, like that's what I've been into.
Nice.
But yeah, my jam's been lots of like Sea Haven, honestly.
Yeah.
Apparently, some Mineral.
Did you share that on Tunes Day too? Was it Sea Haven on Tunes Day this week?
I might have shamelessly promoted Will's new project.
That's what it was. Yep. Wait, what is that project?
Will Cody,
Yeah.
like WILCODY. It's really good. He's been working on it for like the last almost a year now. But no, it's good.
That's a good jam. I like that one.
That's a nice shameless plug too. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Now, what you listen to?
So
Brand New.
that-
Demos from your favorite weapon.
God.
He would be. Matt loves Brand New.
Brand New is one of my favorite bands of all time.
Yeah.
I always say you can cancel Jesse Lacey. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I can't
You
cancel,
still got the records.
I can't cancel Brand New,
Yeah.
like the songs, you know?
To me, the music
But
and
he
the
was
person.
the main
I could separate.
songwriter.
Yeah.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
Hard. It's so hard.
It's rough.
It is
Yeah,
hard.
it's rough. It puts you in a weird position as a music consumer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really does. Like Ryan Adams has a new record coming out, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like,
Matt.
I used to love Ryan Adams, but now I'm like, "Oh crap!" Like, stay away from that one.
What's my jam? First of all, before I say what my jam is, I just want to say for people who don't know, the genesis of Tuesday was the two of you guys.
Yeah. It was well, it was me coming into work and go, Kat, listen to this weird music I found.
Yep. Like, hey, yeah, like Kevin would come up front from the back and be like, so I'm listening to this, like, check this out. And it'd always be something kind of wild. And I'm like, is that French? Like, is this Russian? Like, what are you listening to?
At that time, I was into a lot of Norwegian pop.
Yeah, what was that one song?
Kjartan Lauritzen. Oh, which one?
Yeah, that one.
You mean Game Boy by Kjartan Lauritzen?
Kjartan Lauritzen.
Yeah,
That guy.
Game Boy.
The one that was all about you're like Medusa. You get
Oh,
away.
La Megvada Efre.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. You know the name, Matt.
Clearly.
Come
All
on.
right, so my jam this week is
I just threw out Norwegian on the podcast.
Yeah, can we talk about that?
Damn it.
My jam this week is Good Kid, Mad City by
Ooh.
Kendrick Lamar.
Nice.
Yeah, I jumped right back into that.
Should have been a Grammy.
Should have been a Grammy.
Ah, I got beat out by the Heist. Remember?
No.
Oh, you don't remember that? Oh, it's huge. Anyway,
Mm-mm.
well, you would, if you like Good Kid, Mad City, I will cite to you that Dissect has a new British version of the podcast called Decode.
Yeah,
And they're currently decoding Dave's first album, Psychodrama.
Oh.
Yeah, in which he says a line that's very akin to Good Kid, Mad City.
Really?
Yeah, it's really good. Like,
All right.
Yeah, I've been listening to that, and like I'm not well versed in British UK hip hop, so like that's been a trip for me. But my jam I just heard on the way here, and I listened to it like 3 times, is Jasmine Sullivan's "Pick Up Your Feelings."
Ooh.
Oh, it's good. Got a lot of attitude. Real
Yeah?
good. Yeah. Yeah. Nice 4 count, super bluesy, jazzy, R&B. Jasmine Sullivan's amazing. I mean, she's been around forever. She's a virtuoso. Yeah.
I also just need to shout out Natalie Carr one more time.
Always.
Ah,
Yeah.
she's such a vibe, dude.
She's doing a good job, man.
I love her music.
Always proud of our girl, Natalie.
Nat, if you're listening, what up?
She's our girl.
We love you.
Yeah.
Final thoughts, people?
Nope. Nope.
You always have a bit. What do you mean?
Nope. That was my bit this week. Was we paused long enough for me to go, nope. Katt, thank you a lot for like coming on and sharing with us. You know, something that I think is a trend right now is people seeking out better health for themselves and learning to prioritize themselves in an honest way, in a forward-thinking way, and in a professional way.
Well, thank you guys. And thanks for having me again. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to have you. Not only do we have to have you back on, but when you are
Back in New York, visiting.
we have to hang out when you come back to New York, and when
For
you
sure.
feel the itch to do a little bit of sample roasting, we've got a job for you.
Whoop.
Cue the music.